and often will get caught and scolded. My grandfather, he noticed us going about playing around in the fields. We tried to hide, but ultimately he found out and I was giving a good thrashing and scolded.
ਭਾਈ ਜੱਸਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਭਾਈ ਨਿਹਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਨਿਰਣਾ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ।
As a young boy, he watched local politicians stir up divisions between the communities for their own ends.
ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੌਸਲੇ ਉਹ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
They have to whip up the sentiments of the people, and the easiest way to whip up the sentiments of the people are to tell them that their religion is in danger, that is, their community is in danger. What else would they tell? To hoodwink people, to get votes out of them, to get support out of them. The people had to be hoodwinked, and politicians do this.
Tension also increased in the Punjab's capital, Lahore. Student Somanand always had a lot of Muslim friends. They now refused to talk to him.
A class fellow of mine raised the Congress flag on the school building. The Muslims were very furious. Why? They also raised their Muslim League flag on the school building. So the tension increased. The distrust was already there under the surface. It was there for centuries, but now it came above the surface.
John Moores and his band of Gurkhas were now sent to Lahore to help the local police keep the peace.
We arrived in Lahore around about the 23rd of April. We already knew that there were rumblings going on from intelligence that had been passed to us, and we were briefed on that. And our first job was to get to know the city and how to get around it. We had orders that we were to stay armed, and you'd have to go to a dance or have dinner out somewhere with a 845 revolver strapped on, because there was already talk about people having reprisals.
In the villages of the Punjab, there were few British patrols. The Sikhs began forming jathas, armed bands. Many Sikhs had served in the British Army during the war and still had their weapons. These ex-soldiers began to train their Sikh brothers to prevent a Muslim takeover of the Punjab. Jatadar Shingara Singh had recently been released from prison where he served time for assault. He lived in a Sikh majority part of the Punjab.
A number of Muslims from our village had come down to see my grandfather and told him that they have heard rumors that certain people are getting together in adjoining villages to attack our village and other villages to kill the Muslims.
Aridaman Singh Dillon came from a long line of Sikh warriors. His ancestors had been imprisoned by the British. His grandfather, the village head, refused to join in the wave of communal violence.
A committee of Sikh, Hindu and Muslim people were created, and they were given small arms like lances and axes. We had a couple of guns. And the basic reason for doing this was to guard their own village against the people coming to loot the Muslims of that village and to guard their Muslim friends. And every night they would hold the patrolling throughout the village to guard the village and the Muslims.
Seeing the Sikh preparations for war, Muslim villagers decided to launch a first strike. In March 1947, Sikh villages around Rawalpindi came under attack.
झाड़ियां को बड़े आदमी दिसन लग पे अल्लाह अकबर या अली अक्का अल्लाह अकबर या अली नाल ही उन्होंने कुलाड़ियां होंदियां सन कुलाड़ियां उछाल रहे सन और बड़े मतलब यानी एग्रेसिव सन बड़े गुस्से विच सन जिस तरह के सानू खाई जाणगे ते साडे वास्ते एक नवी गल सी कि सदियां तो असीं उत्थे लोग रह रहे सन कि होया की है.
The Sikhs were heavily outnumbered by Muslims. Their biggest fear was that their women would be taken away, converted and raped.
एक मुसलमान सी गुलाम रसूल उदा नाम सी उसने एक लड़की दी डिमांड की थी कि एक लड़की मैनू दे दिओ ते असी सारे लोकां नू ओ बदमाश टाइप दा आदमी सी और असी सारे लोकां नू इत्थों हटा देंगे.
The women of the village went into hiding. Bir Bahadur Singh's father decided to act to save the honor of his village. His teenage son looked on.
10 साल तो लेके 40 साल दी तक ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੁਨੱਖੀਆਂ ਸਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਇਲਾਕੇ 'ਚ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਸੁਨੱਖੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਸਨ ਪਹਾੜ ਦਾ ਨੀਮ ਪਹਾੜ ਦਾ ਇਲਾਕਾ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ थोड़ा आवाज मारी सब तो पहला अपनी बेटी नो मान बेटा आ जा. मेरी भैन मान कौर जी मेरे को 2 साल वड्डी सी 18 और 19 साल की सी और बैठ गई. मेरे पिताजी ने खंडा कर लगे ते वो वार जड़ा सी वो लग्या ना वार लग्या ना रब जाने मुंह आ गया और की हो गया. मेरी बहन ने अपनी गुत्त इंज की थी और मेरे पिताजी ने बड़े गुस्से नाल उहदा दुपट्टा इंज कीता और मोरी कृपान और सिर वो परे सी पे. और दो चाचा भतीजा ने मेरे एक होर ताया जी भी उपर सन जिन्हों का काफी बड़ा शरीर सी उन्होंने सारे ने कटना शुरू किया. खट 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 की आवाज आन सी. मैं यकीन जान के जाना 60 साल मैंने अज की याद है किसी ने हाई नहीं की बस वाहगुरू की आवाज आती रही है. किसी ने हाई नहीं की कोई नस्सी नहीं किसी ने रोला नहीं पाया.
Such scenes were repeated throughout the western Punjab in March and April 1947. With the threat of all-out conflict, a deal became a matter of urgency. The Congress leader, Pandit Nehru, now had power within his grasp. But to get the British out quickly, he had to compromise. He abandoned his dream of a united India and accepted partition.
A statement will be read to you tonight, giving the final decision of His Majesty's government as to the method by which power will be transferred from British to Indian hands.
On the night of June 3rd, 1947, Mountbatten, Jinnah and Nehru broadcast the news that they had finally struck a deal. They would divide India in two.
I must honestly appeal to every community, and particularly to Muslim India, to maintain peace and order.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was like a dream come true, you know.
Mighty forces are at work in the world today and in India, and I have no doubt that we are ushering in a period of greatness for India.
I remember I heaved a sigh of relief that there was partition, because we did not want to live with the Muslims anymore.
But there can be no question of coercing any large areas in which one community has a majority to live against their will under a government in which another community has a majority.
The partition deal involved giving those provinces with a Muslim majority to Pakistan and those with a Hindu one to India. But Mountbatten and Nehru insisted that the Punjab and Bengal would be treated differently despite their Muslim majorities. Jinnah was forced to accept that both these provinces would be cut in half and divided between India and Pakistan. The next day, at a press conference, Mountbatten dropped a bombshell. Britain would not be leaving in June 1948, as had been planned, but on August 15th, 1947, just 3 months away. When asked why the date had been brought forward by nearly a year, Mountbatten replied, "Why should we wait? Waiting would mean that I should be responsible, ultimately, for law and order."
It should have been possible for them to say that, look, there is no great hurry, don't fix a timetable, let it proceed in a more orderly manner. But he was a decisive man. This is the job I have to do, this is the date by which I'll do it. This was his personality that made the pace of the partition furious, impossible to moderate.
It was no question of it being too soon, it was much too late. Because in fact, when he arrived, he saw the situation was so much more volcanic than he'd been led to believe in England. And he had that diary that he had over everybody's desk saying however many days to independence, because it seemed so unbelievable. And the next morning you went into your office, it was 1 day less, and it certainly concentrated people's minds.
But with 3 months to go, no decision had been made on one crucial matter: where the border between Pakistan and India would lie. A new boundary had to be urgently drawn up. The man chosen for the task had never been east of Paris: British barrister Sir Cyril Radcliffe.
Cyril Radcliffe was a very remarkable man. It was not just the quality of his mind, though that was formidable, perhaps the most formidable I ever encountered, I think. He had this unerring gift for going to the heart of anything he was discussing. He came very clearly to a rational conclusion. He was a very rational man.
On July 8th, Radcliffe arrived in India. He moved into a bungalow on the Viceroy's estate. With partition only 36 days away, he met Mountbatten. The brilliant and serious barrister did not quite hit it off with the flamboyant Viceroy.
I think he thought that he was a vain man, and not a man whose judgment was totally to be relied upon. But he didn't dislike him, and I think he respected the fact that Mountbatten was the last Viceroy and doing the best he could with a very difficult remit.
Could you get me the figures, please, for the Gurdaspur district? I believe I'm right in saying that there is a narrow Muslim majority, but not a substantial one.
Yes, it's 50.6%.
50.6.
With his private secretary, Christopher Beaumont, Radcliffe began his work. His toughest job would be in the Punjab and Bengal, which were being divided in two. Radcliffe was being asked to draw a line through the middle of both provinces. In doing so, he would look at which religion was in a majority in each individual district but he would also take into account other factors, such as